I wanted to find the truth, but it knew my name before I even opened the door. My name is Ethan Vance, and I am a journalist. Or, at least I was. My career, my sanity, everything I knew, shattered in a place called Blackwood Pines. It is a forgotten stretch of wilderness in the heart of the Oregon Cascades, where the trees stretch so high they block out the sun, and the silence hums with an ancient, unsettling energy. I went there chasing a story, a cold case that had haunted the region for over 2 decades, the sudden unexplained disappearance of the Blackwood family from their remote mountain motel. It was supposed to be a deep dive into rural crime, a tragic tale of a family lost to the wilderness, or perhaps something far more sinister, a human evil. I never expected it to be both, intertwined with something far older, far more terrifying than any human could conceive. This story, the one I am about to tell you, combines a chilling real-life mystery with elements that defy all logical explanation. It is the truth, as I lived it, as it slowly consumed me. Subscribe and hit the bell for more stories like this, and let me know in the comments what time you are watching and from what city. The air grew heavy with pine and damp earth as my old Ford Explorer devoured the last paved miles of Highway 242. Then the asphalt surrendered to gravel, the world shrinking into a tunnel of towering firs and cedars. It was May of 2008, and the early spring melt had turned the forest floor into a slick, mossy carpet. My breath hitched in my throat, not from the climb, but from the oppressive quiet that settled over the landscape, a silence far deeper than any I had ever experienced. This was not just an absence of sound, it was an active, palpable emptiness that seemed to fill the space itself, pushing out all familiar sounds of nature. Even the bird song had ceased, replaced only by the distant rustling of wind in the treetops, a sound that echoed like a sigh. The Blackwood Pines Motel, my destination, was not on any modern map. It was a ghost, a relic of a forgotten era, its existence whispered about in hushed tones by the few locals who still remembered the tragedy. 22 years ago, the Blackwood family, Thomas and Eleanor, and their 2 young children, Sarah and David, vanished without a trace from this very spot. The police investigation had gone cold, leaving behind only speculation and a few tattered files. I had stumbled upon the case while sifting through old newspaper archives, an overlooked footnote in the grand tapestry of unsolved mysteries. The idea of an entire family simply disappearing into thin air, leaving behind all their possessions, struck a chord within me. It felt personal, a void that demanded to be filled. My own family's history, shadowed by an unresolved disappearance, fueled my obsession. My grandmother's cousin, a young woman named Clara, had vanished from a logging camp in the same region decades before the Blackwoods. Her story was a family secret, a whispered tragedy. I clung to the hope that by understanding one disappearance, I might somehow find solace or even answers about another. The road ahead was a winding, treacherous ribbon of gray, flanked by trees that seemed to lean in, whispering secrets only the wind could carry. The light began to dim, even though it was only early afternoon, the dense canopy creating a perpetual twilight. A shiver traced its way down my spine, a feeling I could not quite shake, that I was not just entering a forest, but crossing a threshold. It was a sensation, as if the very air around me was becoming thicker, charged with an invisible energy that pressed against my eardrums. The GPS on my phone, already struggling, finally gave up the ghost. I was alone, truly alone, in a place that seemed to actively resist human presence. The few houses I had passed hours ago were long gone, replaced by an unbroken expanse of wilderness. My headlights cut through the gloom, illuminating thick fog banks that snaked through the trees, giving the impression of spectral figures lurking just beyond the reach of my vision. The air grew colder, the scent of damp earth deepening, mingled with something else, something metallic and faintly sweet, like decaying leaves and perhaps old blood. This scent was subtle, yet so persistent it was impossible to ignore. My hands tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles white. This was not just a story anymore, it was a descent, and I had no idea how far down it went. A sudden flash of light, a flicker in the distant trees, caught my eye. It was almost imperceptible, a mere ghost of illumination, but enough to register in the deepening twilight. My heart hammered against my ribs. I slowed the explorer, my gaze fixed on the spot where I had seen it. There was nothing now, just the oppressive darkness of the forest. Had it been a trick of the light, a reflection, or something else entirely? The silence pressed in, no longer just quiet, but watchful. I tried to dismiss it, to tell myself it was just nerves, the isolation playing tricks on my mind. But a cold knot of dread formed in my stomach, a premonition that this place was different, that its secrets were not merely historical, but actively guarded. I pressed on, the gravel crunching under my tires, each revolution bringing me closer to the chilling truth that awaited me in Blackwood Pines. The forest itself felt like a living entity, its breath the cold air, its eyes the countless shadows, its voice the rustling leaves that seemed to whisper my name. I felt a growing sense of being watched, an uncomfortable prickling sensation on the back of my neck. This was not just a physical journey, it was a journey into the unsettling heart of something ancient and malevolent. The sign appeared abruptly, weathered and faded, almost swallowed by the overgrowth. Blackwood Pines Motel Vacancy. The letters, once painted in a cheerful green, were now peeling and cracked, barely legible. A wave of unease washed over me, a physical manifestation of the dread I had been feeling. This was it, the place where a family simply ceased to exist. The motel itself was a collection of dilapidated cabins, huddled around a central office building that looked like it had been abandoned mid-sentence. Paint peeled from the wooden walls, windows were either boarded up or shattered, and the faint scent of mildew and decay hung heavy in the air. A forgotten child's tricycle, rusted and tilted on its side, lay half buried in the tall grass near what must have been the playground. It was a stark reminder of the innocence that had once existed here, now corrupted by an unseen stain. The sense of profound quiet was broken only by the chirping of crickets, a sound that usually brought comfort, but here only amplified the feeling of isolation. It was as if the world outside had forgotten this place, leaving it to fester in its own sorrowful silence. I pulled my explorer up to the main office, its engine dying with a final shuddering gasp. The silence that followed was absolute, deafening. The key felt heavy in my hand, a relic of a time when the motel might have offered a semblance of comfort. It was a simple, tarnished brass key, embossed with the number 6. According to my research, room 6 was where the Blackwood family had spent their last night. The thought sent a chill through me. I imagined Thomas and Eleanor putting their children to bed, unaware of the horror that awaited them. It was a morbid curiosity that drew me to this room, a need to experience the last known point of their lives, to feel the lingering echoes of their presence. The door creaked open, groaning on rusted hinges, revealing a room shrouded in perpetual gloom. The single window, facing the dense forest, was coated in a thick layer of dust, filtering the already faint light into a sickly gray. A heavy, cloying scent hung in the air, a mix of old wood, stagnant dust, and something else, something I could not quite place, sweet, almost floral, but with an underlying metallic tang. It was the scent of forgotten memories and lingering dread. Dust motes danced in the sparse beams of light, swirling like miniature ghosts. The air was cold, a penetrating dampness that seeped into my bones, despite the mild spring weather outside. The furniture was sparse and decrepit. A saggy twin bed occupied one wall, its mattress stained and torn. A small wooden dresser stood against another, its drawers partially ajar, revealing nothing but empty space and cobwebs. A faded floral wallpaper clung precariously to the walls, peeling in long strips, revealing the bare plaster beneath. It looked like a place that had died a slow, painful death. My flashlight cut a swath through the darkness, illuminating the details. The bed, the dresser, the small circular table with 2 chairs, all seemed to hold their breath, waiting. I ran a gloved hand over the grimy surface of the dresser. Nothing, No hidden clues, no forgotten trinkets, just dust. As I moved deeper into the room, my foot brushed against something on the floor. I shone my light down. It was a child's wooden block, painted with a faded letter S. Sarah. A jolt went through me, a sudden sharp pang of sorrow. This was not just a crime scene anymore. It was a testament to lost lives, to dreams extinguished. I picked up the block, its small size a heartbreaking reminder of the child who once held it. It felt unnaturally cold, despite the warmth of my hand. I placed it carefully on the dresser, a silent promise to its owner. My gaze swept over the room again, searching for anything, any anomaly that might have escaped the initial police sweep. My eyes landed on a faint discoloration on the wallpaper, near the ceiling. It looked like a water stain, but the way it spread, almost like tendrils, was unsettling. I stretched, trying to get a closer look. It was not a stain. It was a pattern, a series of faint, interlocking symbols, barely visible beneath the grime. They looked ancient, primordial, unlike anything I had ever seen. The hair on my arms stood on end. This was definitely not a water stain, and it was definitely not part of any motel decor. It was a deliberate marking, a message left behind, but by whom and for what purpose? A shiver, colder than any I had felt yet, ran through me. The symbols seemed to hum with a low, almost inaudible energy. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. Could it be a prank? A local artist's strange expression? But the feeling of ancientness, of something deeply unsettling, dispelled those thoughts. I took out my phone, despite the lack of signal, and snapped a picture of the symbols, hoping to analyze them later. As the flash illuminated the wall, I noticed something else, something that made my blood run cold. Etched into the plaster just below the symbols, almost invisible unless you knew where to look, were two words: he sees. My breath hitched. He sees. Who? What? The air in the room seemed to thicken, pressing in on me, suffocating me. The initial excitement of finding a clue quickly morphed into a profound sense of dread. This was not just a cold case anymore. This was a living, breathing mystery, and I had just stepped into its lair. The faint floral scent I had noticed earlier intensified, now cloyingly sweet, like death. And then, a whisper, so soft I almost missed it, seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. My name, Ethan. The whisper was gone as quickly as it came, leaving only the oppressive silence of the room. I stood frozen, my heart pounding against my ribs, convinced I had imagined it. But the lingering echo of my name, spoken in that ethereal, chilling tone, suggested otherwise. It was a sound that crawled under my skin, raising goosebumps along my arms. I slowly turned, my flashlight beam sweeping across the room, searching for a source, a trick of the ventilation, anything, but there was nothing. Only the dust motes dancing in the faint light, and the unsettling symbols on the wall, now seeming to pulse with a faint, malevolent energy. The local library in the nearest town, a place called Willow Creek, was a small, unassuming building, smelling faintly of old paper and dust. I arrived the next morning, the chilling encounter in room 6 still fresh in my mind. My immediate goal was to find anything, any local folklore, any historical accounts that might shed light on the symbols I had found. The librarian, a woman named Martha with kind eyes and a perpetually worried frown, seemed surprised to see a stranger. Willow Creek was not exactly a tourist destination. I explained my interest in the Blackwood family disappearance, careful to omit the more unsettling details of my discovery. Martha's expression saddened. "A tragic business, that," she murmured, her voice soft. "Poor family, never a trace." She pointed me towards a small section of local history books, dusty and rarely touched. "You might find something there, but I doubt it. The police turned this place upside down back then." I spent hours poring over the brittle pages of old town records, local histories, and faded newspapers. Most of the information was a repetition of what I already knew: a family vanished, a cold case, a mystery. But then, tucked away in a collection of regional folklore, I found it, a slim, leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age, its cover embossed with a single, crudely drawn symbol, one of the very symbols I had seen in room 6. My heart leaped into my throat. The journal belonged to a man named Silas Thorne, a reclusive botanist who had lived in the Blackwood Pines area in the late 1920s. His entries were erratic, a chaotic mix of scientific observations and increasingly paranoid ramblings. He wrote about the Whispering Woods, a local term for the forest around Blackwood Pines, and the forest whisperers, ancient entities he claimed to have encountered. He described them as shadows that feed on memory, their presence heralded by a strange, sweet scent and a feeling of profound emptiness. My hands trembled as I read. This was it, a direct link to the symbols, to the unsettling feeling I had experienced. Thorne's descriptions, though fantastical, resonated with my own unsettling observations. He spoke of the turning, a process by which the whisperers claimed their victims, slowly eroding their minds and memories until they simply ceased to be. One particular entry sent a shiver of ice through my veins. It was dated October of 1929. The scent is strong tonight. They are near. They know my name. They whisper of the past, of what I have forgotten. They promise solace in oblivion. Below it, scrawled in a frantic hand, was a sketch of the same symbols I had found in the motel room. Thorne's final entry was even more chilling. The veil thins, the world unravels. They are here, and they know everything. The journal abruptly ended there, a chilling silence that spoke volumes. There was no mention of his fate, no record of his death or disappearance. He simply ceased to write, just as the Blackwood family simply ceased to exist. I looked up, my eyes meeting Martha's. She was watching me, a strange knowing look in her eyes. "That old book," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Some say it is cursed, found it in a box of old donations years ago. No one ever checked it out." My mind raced, connecting the dots, the symbols, the scent, the feeling of emptiness. It all pointed to a truth far more terrifying than any human crime. The silence of the library suddenly felt heavy, laden with unspoken secrets. The air was thick with the dust of forgotten tales, and I felt a profound sense of being watched, as if the very words on the page were reaching out to me. The faint scent of decay, the same scent from room 6, seemed to permeate the air around me. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but undeniably present. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The forest whisperers were not just a legend. They were real, and they had been here for a very long time, preying on the forgotten, the isolated. I closed the journal, its ancient leather cover feeling strangely alive in my hands. The librarian, Martha, was still watching me, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and something akin to pity. I felt a desperate urge to ask her more, to pull more information from her, but the words caught in my throat. The secrets of Blackwood Pines were not meant to be spoken aloud. Armed with Silas Thorne's journal, I returned to Blackwood Pines, my resolve hardening despite the growing dread. The sun had begun its descent, casting long, eerie shadows through the dense forest. Each rustle of leaves, each snapping twig, felt amplified, imbued with a sinister intent. The scent of pine and damp earth was now irrevocably linked with the cloying sweetness of decay, a scent that seemed to cling to my clothes, my skin. I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that the forest whisperers were not confined to the motel. They were everywhere, woven into the very fabric of the woods. My goal was to explore the immediate vicinity of the motel, to see if I could find any other signs, any other places where the symbols might appear. I walked slowly, deliberately, my eyes scanning the ancient trees, the rocky outcroppings, the tangled undergrowth. The silence here was different from the silence in the library. It was not peaceful, but expectant, as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. The air grew colder, the light fading rapidly. I pulled my jacket tighter, the fabric offering little comfort against the creeping chill. Each step on the damp ground was accompanied by a soft squelch that seemed unnaturally loud in the oppressive quiet. As I ventured deeper, the trees grew denser, their branches intertwined overhead, forming a perpetual twilight. The ground became uneven, covered in a thick layer of decaying leaves and moss. I found myself walking on what felt like an ancient path, barely discernible, but still there, leading further into the heart of the woods. It was a path that seemed to call to me, to beckon me deeper into its secrets. My gut screamed at me to turn back, to flee this place and never look back. But my journalistic instincts, fueled by the unsettling knowledge of the forest whisperers, pushed me forward. I had to know. I had to understand. Suddenly, a sound. It was not a whisper this time, but a faint, almost melodic hum, like a distant, distorted choir. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, vibrating through the very air, unsettling my teeth. The humming grew louder, subtly shifting in pitch, a strange, discordant harmony. Then, the scent intensified, becoming overwhelmingly sweet, almost nauseating. It was the smell of 1,000 decaying flowers, mingled with something metallic, something like iron and old pennies. My head began to throb, a dull ache that quickly intensified into a sharp, piercing pain. The trees around me seemed to sway, their branches weaving together, forming distorted, shadowy figures. I squeezed my eyes shut, then opened them again, trying to clear my vision, but the illusion persisted. The forest was alive, and it was watching me. A sudden gust of wind, cold and unnatural, swept through the trees, carrying with it a cacophony of whispers. They were not distinct words, but a jumble of fragmented sounds, like 1,000 voices speaking at once, their words overlapping, intertwining, forming a chaotic, incomprehensible symphony. My name, Ethan, was among them, repeated over and over, distorted and drawn out, like a mournful sigh. My heart hammered in my chest, a frantic drum against my ribs. I stumbled backward, tripping over a gnarled root, landing hard on the damp earth. The journal slipped from my grasp, its pages fluttering open, revealing Thorne's frantic sketches of the symbols. The symbols on the page seemed to glow faintly, pulsing with a malevolent energy. The whispers intensified, becoming louder, more insistent, no longer just a jumble of sounds, but distinct words, though still fragmented and distorted. They spoke of forgotten memories, of fear, of an insatiable hunger, and then a single clear phrase, cutting through the chaotic symphony of voices. She never left. My grandmother's cousin, Clara. The whispers knew her name. They knew about my family. This was not just about the Blackwoods anymore. This was about me and my past. I scrambled to my feet, my mind reeling, a cold terror gripping me. The forest, once a source of comfort, had become a living nightmare, and I was trapped within its chilling embrace. I backed away slowly, my breath coming in ragged gasps, the whispers still echoing in my ears. The sense of profound unease had morphed into outright terror. They knew about Clara. They knew my family. This was no longer just a true crime investigation. It was a deeply personal horror. I scrambled to retrieve Silas Thorne's journal, clutching it to my chest like a shield. My legs felt like lead, heavy and unresponsive, but I forced myself to move, to put distance between myself and the whispering darkness of the forest. The only thought in my mind was escape, to find safety, to understand what I had stumbled into. The sun had finally dipped below the horizon, plunging the Blackwood Pines motel into an inky blackness. I had retreated to room 6, the only place that offered a flimsy illusion of safety, despite the unsettling symbols on the wall. The whispers, though fainter, still seemed to cling to the air, a phantom presence that gnawed at the edges of my sanity. My flashlight beam cut through the oppressive darkness, illuminating the familiar, decaying space. I needed to find more answers, and the journal, Silas Thorne's journal, was my only lead. I reread the last entry. The veil thins, the world unravels. They are here, and they know everything. He had been close to something, but what and where? My gaze drifted to the small circular table in the corner of the room. It seemed out of place, slightly newer than the other furniture, and had a strange, almost invisible seam running around its base. A faint scratching sound, almost like a mouse, emanated from beneath it. My heart pounded. I knelt down, running my hand along the bottom edge of the table. My fingers brushed against a small, almost imperceptible latch. I pressed it, and with a soft click, a section of the floorboards beneath the table sprang open, revealing a dark, gaping hole, a hidden cellar. My breath caught in my throat. The air that wafted up from the opening was thick with the same sweet, decaying scent that permeated the forest. But here it was far more intense, almost suffocating. It smelled of rot and something else, something metallic and undeniably unsettling, like the lingering scent of iron and old pennies. I shone my flashlight down into the darkness. A set of crudely constructed wooden steps led downwards, disappearing into the inky blackness. The silence of the motel room was shattered by the rhythmic dripping of water, echoing from the depths below. It was a sound that spoke of decay, of dampness, of things best left undisturbed. But I could not resist the pull. This was a direct link, a physical manifestation of the secrets hidden within this place. I hesitated for a moment, my mind screaming at me to turn back, to seal the opening, and flee. But the journalist in me, the part that craved answers, that refused to let a mystery lie dormant, pushed me forward. I had to know what was down there. I carefully descended the rickety steps, each one groaning under my weight, the wood soft and spongy with rot. The air grew colder, the scent more potent, a thick cloying fog that made my eyes water. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a small earthen room. The walls were rough, unadorned, and the floor was damp earth. In the center of the room, a rough-hewn wooden table stood, covered in dust and cobwebs. On the table lay a collection of bizarre artifacts. Several crudely fashioned wooden totems, adorned with feathers and dried animal bones, were arranged in a circle. In the center of the circle was a small ornate wooden box. My hand trembled as I reached for it, a sense of profound unease washing over me. As my fingers brushed against the aged wood, a faint whisper, far clearer than any I had heard before, resonated through the cellar. He found them. The voice was raspy, ancient, like dry leaves scraping against stone. It was not a human voice. It was something else entirely. My blood ran cold. The whispers were not just in the forest. They were in the very heart of this place. The cellar was not just a hiding place. It was a sanctuary, a ritual space, and the wooden box was its core. The sudden, clear whisper sent a jolt of pure terror through me. My hand recoiled from the wooden box as if burned. The cellar, once merely a hidden room, now felt like a sentient entity, its darkness breathing, its silence judging. I scrambled backward, my eyes darting around the small space, searching for the source of the voice. There was nothing, only the oppressive gloom and the unsettling artifacts. The air grew heavy, thick with the unidentifiable scent, making it difficult to breathe. I was trapped, caught in the heart of something ancient and malevolent, and I knew with chilling certainty that I was not alone. My heart still hammered against my ribs, but the primal fear began to recede, replaced by a cold, clinical curiosity. The voice, the scent, the symbols, it all pointed to one thing: a cult. And not just any cult, but one tied to the ancient insidious force Silas Thorne had described as the Forest Whisperers. This hidden cellar, with its disturbing artifacts, was undeniable proof. I forced myself to approach the table again, my hands still trembling as I reached for the wooden box. It was surprisingly light, made of some dark, unfamiliar wood, intricately carved with symbols that mirrored those on the motel wall and in Thorne's journal. I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of dried leaves, were several small, desiccated objects. My breath hitched. These were horrifying organic remains, shriveled and blackened with age, resembling body parts. Their appearance caused instant nausea, threatening to overwhelm me. This was not just a cult. It was a grotesque, macabre organization. This was not just a place of ritual. It was a place of sacrifice. And these remains, they were trophies. My gaze shifted to the other objects in the box, a collection of small, tarnished silver coins, each etched with the same unsettling symbols. A lock of dark hair, tied with a thin leather thong, and finally, a faded, yellowed photograph. It was a picture of a young woman, her face obscured by shadows, her eyes wide with terror. Tucked beneath the photograph was a small handwritten note. The handwriting was faint, almost illegible, but I could make out a few words. They came for her memories. She saw too much. My mind raced, connecting the disturbing artifacts to Thorne's ramblings about the whisperers feeding on memory. This was a ritual, a grotesque exchange. The cult, it seemed, was not just worshipping these entities, but actively aiding them, perhaps even providing them with victims. The implications were horrifying. This was not a passive entity, but an active, malevolent force. The silence in the cellar was broken only by the frantic beat of my own heart, a drum against the suffocating silence. The air grew colder, the scent of decay intensifying, mingled with something else, something I could not quite identify, a metallic, almost coppery odor. My flashlight beam, still cutting through the darkness, illuminated the walls of the cellar. I noticed faint etchings, almost imperceptible against the earthen surface. I leaned closer, tracing the lines with my finger. They were more symbols, intertwined with crude drawings of stick figures, some with distorted faces, others with vacant eyes, and then a series of dates, meticulously carved into the soft earth: 1942, 1967, 1986. Each date was followed by a single chilling word: taken. These were not random dates. These were the years of other disappearances in the region, cases that had remained unsolved, forgotten by time. My family's disappearance, Clara, had been in 1942. My blood ran cold. The cult had been active for decades, perhaps even centuries, its tendrils reaching through time, claiming victims, feeding the whisperers. The photograph, the lock of hair, the coins, the remains, they were not just artifacts. They were remnants, fragments of lives consumed, of memories devoured. And the symbols, now terrifyingly familiar, were the cult's signature, their mark of ownership. A low guttural hum, almost imperceptible, seemed to emanate from the very walls of the cellar. It was the same hum I had heard in the woods, but now it was closer, more defined, a sound that vibrated through my bones. It was not a human sound. It was the sound of something ancient, something hungry. The symbols on the wall seemed to pulse with a faint, malevolent light, their ancient power awakening. I felt a profound sense of despair, a crushing realization of the sheer scale of the evil I had stumbled upon. And then a new set of words, etched deeper into the earth, stood out against the others. The Keeper. He protects the veil. The Keeper. Another piece of the puzzle. Another player in this ancient, terrifying game, and I was now a part of it. The sudden, clear whisper sent a jolt of pure terror through me. My hand recoiled from the wooden box as if burned. The cellar, once merely a hidden room, now felt like a sentient entity, its darkness breathing, its silence judging. I scrambled backward, my eyes darting around the small space, searching for the source of the voice. There was nothing, only the oppressive gloom and the unsettling artifacts. The air grew heavy, thick with the unidentifiable scent, making it difficult to breathe. I was trapped, caught in the heart of something ancient and malevolent, and I knew with chilling certainty that I was not alone. I emerged from the hidden cellar, gasping for breath, the stench of decay clinging to my clothes. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a stark contrast to the darkness that now permeated my mind. My only hope for further answers lay with the locals, the few who still remembered the old legends, the whispers of the woods. My thoughts turned to Old Man Hemlock, a reclusive trapper I had heard about in Willow Creek. They said he lived deep in the forest, a hermit who knew the mountains like the back of his hand. They also said he was a little off, but he was my last resort. The drive to Hemlock's cabin was a nightmare. The gravel road, already treacherous, was now cloaked in an unnatural fog that seemed to swallow the light of my headlights. The trees, once majestic and comforting, now seemed to loom, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching for me. The whispers, faint at first, grew louder, more insistent, a constant hum at the edge of my hearing. They were not just my name now. They were fragments of voices, distorted and overlapping, like ghosts reliving their final moments. My head throbbed, a relentless pain that made it difficult to focus. Hemlock's cabin was a ramshackle collection of mismatched wood and corrugated metal, nestled in a small clearing. A faint light glowed from within, a beacon in the encroaching darkness. I hesitated at the door, my hand hovering over the rough wood. What if he was part of the cult? What if he was the keeper? But the desperation for answers outweighed my fear. I knocked, the sound echoing hollowly in the quiet night. The door creaked open, revealing an old man with wild, unkempt white hair and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of 1,000 secrets. His face was a roadmap of wrinkles, etched deep by years of exposure to the elements. He smelled of wood smoke, stale coffee, and something else, something faintly earthy, like damp soil. "You are not from around here," he rasped, his voice like gravel. It was not a question. I explained who I was, a journalist researching the Blackwood disappearance, and showed him Silas Thorne's journal, open to the page with the symbols. His eyes, initially wary, widened, a flicker of recognition in their depths. He led me inside, motioning to a rickety wooden chair by a crackling fireplace. The cabin was cluttered with animal traps, furs, and strange dried herbs hanging from the rafters. The air was thick with the scent of wood smoke, and something else, something faintly medicinal, like bitter roots. I asked him about the Blackwood family, about the symbols, about the forest whisperers. He listened, his eyes never leaving my face, his gaze unnervingly intense. When I finished, he stoked the fire, its flames casting dancing shadows on his weathered face. "The whisperers," he began, his voice low, almost a whisper itself. "They are not spirits, boy. They are older than these mountains. They feed on what makes us human, our memories, our souls." He paused, taking a long drag from a hand-rolled cigarette, the cherry glowing red in the dim light. "The cult, they call themselves the Veil Keepers. They believe the Whisperers are a divine force, a way to transcend the earthly realm. They offer them offerings." He did not need to elaborate. The remains in the box were enough. "The Keeper?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Who is he?" Hemlock's eyes narrowed, a flicker of fear in their depths. "He has been here for generations, protecting the veil, as they say, ensuring the Whisperers can cross over when the time is right." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "He knew about your family, did he not? Your grandmother's cousin." My blood ran cold. "He knew. How?" I choked out, my voice barely audible. Hemlock simply smiled, a thin, unsettling smile that did not reach his eyes. "The Whisperers, they share memories, they feed on them, and they remember everything. They knew you were coming, Ethan. They have been waiting for you." A sudden chill permeated the small cabin, a coldness that had nothing to do with the outside air. The fire in the hearth seemed to flicker, its light momentarily dimming. I felt a sudden, intense pressure behind my eyes, a dull ache that quickly sharpened into a piercing pain. The scent of decay, the cloying sweetness filled the air, stronger than ever. Hemlock's words hung in the air, a terrifying pronouncement. I was not just a journalist, I was a target, and the Whisperers, through their keeper, had drawn me into their ancient malevolent web. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of forgotten memories and looming dread. And then, a whisper, clear as a bell, directly into my ear. "He knows your secret, my secret, the one I had buried so deep, the one about Clara." The whisper, clear and insidious, sent a fresh wave of terror through me. My secret, the guilt I carried, the unspoken knowledge about Clara's disappearance that had haunted my family for decades. It was as if the Whisperers had reached directly into my mind, plucking out my deepest fears and anxieties. Old Man Hemlock watched me, his gaze unblinking, a knowing smile playing on his lips. The air in the cabin grew thick, suffocating. I needed to escape, to process this new, horrifying revelation. I fled Hemlock's cabin, his cryptic words and the chilling whisper echoing in my mind. The forest seemed to close in around me, the trees now resembling gnarled skeletal figures reaching out, their branches clawing at the moonless sky. My mind was a whirlwind of fear and confusion. They knew my secret. They knew about Clara. The thought propelled me forward, a desperate urge to put distance between myself and the unsettling old man and the malevolent entities he served. I drove erratically, my old Explorer skidding on the gravel, the headlights cutting through the oppressive darkness, illuminating nothing but an endless expanse of trees. The road, once a clear path, now seemed to twist and turn, leading me deeper into the labyrinthine embrace of the forest. Familiar landmarks were gone, replaced by a monotonous repetition of towering firs and rocky outcroppings. My heart pounded, a frantic drum against my ribs. I knew with a terrifying certainty that I was no longer on the main road. I was lost, intentionally so, caught in a trap set by the Whisperers, or perhaps the Veil Keepers. The scent of decay intensified, now accompanied by a sickly sweet floral odor, like lilies on a corpse. My head throbbed, the pain a dull, constant ache that threatened to split my skull. Suddenly, the engine sputtered, then died, plunging me into absolute silence and darkness. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. The cold silence was immediately filled by the whispers, closer now, more defined, a swirling vortex of voices that seemed to emanate from every direction. They were no longer fragments. They were clear, distinct words, though still overlapping and distorted, a chorus of agony and remembrance. Clara, lonely, forgotten, ours. My breath hitched. Clara, they were calling her name. They were taunting me with her memory, the guilt I carried for a life I never truly understood, a disappearance that had always been a mystery. The whispering voices grew louder, their words weaving a tapestry of fear and despair. They spoke of the Blackwood family, their final moments, their terror. They spoke of Thomas and Eleanor, their memories slowly consumed, their love fading into nothingness. They spoke of Sarah and David, their innocent joy replaced by a profound emptiness. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the horrifying sounds, but they penetrated my mind, burrowing deep into my thoughts, planting seeds of doubt and despair. This was not just an auditory hallucination, it was a psychic assault, a direct invasion of my consciousness. The veil between worlds was thinning, just as Silas Thorne had written. When I opened my eyes, the scene outside my car had changed. The trees, once ordinary, were now twisted and grotesque, their branches forming grasping claws, their bark resembling leathery skin. The fog, thick and pervasive, swirled around them, forming phantom figures, their shapes indistinct, shifting, menacing. And then I saw them, not clearly, but as fleeting glimpses, distorted reflections in the fog. Tall, slender figures, their forms elongated and shadowy, their movements unnaturally fluid. They seemed to float above the forest floor, their presence marked by the intensified scent of decay and the suffocating cold. The forest whisperers. They were here, and they were coming for me. My terror reached a fever pitch. I fumbled for my phone, desperate for a signal, for any connection to the outside world. But the screen remained blank, a dead weight in my trembling hand. The whispers intensified, now forming a single, unified voice, a low guttural hum that vibrated through my very bones. Join us, Ethan. Forget your pain. Forget your loss. Forget her. They were offering me oblivion, the same oblivion they had offered Clara, the Blackwoods, and countless others. And for a fleeting moment, a terrifying, desperate moment, the thought was almost appealing. The lure of oblivion, of forgetting the pain and the guilt, was a dangerous temptation. But the journalist in me, the part that craved truth, fought against it. I would not succumb. I would not forget. The monstrous figures in the fog seemed to draw closer, their shadowy forms becoming more defined, their silent approach filling me with a primal dread. I knew I had to move, to escape this waking nightmare, or become another forgotten memory in the whispering woods. My breath caught in my throat, a silent scream. I threw open the car door, the whispers intensifying, now a chaotic symphony of disembodied voices, all vying for my attention. The cloying scent of decay was overwhelming, making me gag. I stumbled out into the fog, the distorted figures of the whisperers swirling around me, their shadowy forms almost solid. My mind screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like lead. I was disoriented, my sense of direction shattered. I had no idea where I was, or where I was going. Through the swirling fog, a faint light glimmered in the distance. It was a beacon, a desperate hope, in the overwhelming darkness. I staggered towards it, my body propelled by a primal instinct for survival. As I drew closer, the light resolved into a dilapidated, abandoned church, its steeple a skeletal finger pointing to the moonless sky. Its windows were shattered, its doors hanging precariously on rusted hinges. It looked ancient, forgotten, a relic of a faith long abandoned. A strange sense of dread, different from the terror of the whisperers, settled over me. This was not a place of refuge. This was a trap. I pushed open the heavy wooden doors, their groaning protest echoing through the silent forest. The interior of the church was eerily quiet, the air thick with dust, and the pervasive scent of decay. Moonlight streamed through the shattered windows, illuminating a scene of chilling ritual. The pews were overturned, scattered like fallen dominoes. In the center of the nave, a large, crudely constructed altar stood, adorned with the same wooden totems, dried bones, and feathers I had found in the cellar. And there, standing before the altar, his back to me, was Old Man Hemlock. He was dressed in a dark, flowing robe, intricately embroidered with the symbols of the Whisperers, the Keeper. My blood ran cold. He turned slowly, his face illuminated by the faint moonlight. His eyes, once merely old and knowing, now glowed with a malevolent, unnatural light. A thin, knowing smile played on his lips. "You came," he rasped, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "I knew you would. The Whisperers led you here." He raised his hands, and I saw that his fingers, though old and gnarled, were adorned with ancient, tarnished silver rings, each etched with the Whisperer symbols. "You seek answers, Ethan. I have them. The truth about your Clara, the truth about the Blackwoods, the truth about the veil." His words hung in the air, a twisted invitation. He knew my deepest desire, my greatest weakness. He gestured towards the altar. "They are hungry tonight. Your memories, they are sweet, especially those touched by guilt." The scent of decay intensified, becoming almost unbearable, a suffocating miasma. I felt a profound sense of pressure behind my eyes, a dull ache that quickly sharpened into a piercing pain. My vision blurred, the edges of the room undulating, shifting. The Whisperers, still outside, seemed to press against the walls of the church, their presence palpable, their whispers a constant, low hum that vibrated through the very stones of the building. The air grew colder, an icy breath that seeped into my bones. My head swam, and I felt a strange detachment, as if my own body was no longer truly mine. Then, a sudden blinding flash of light emanated from the altar. The symbols carved into its surface glowed with an eerie green luminescence. Old Man Hemlock, the Keeper, began chanting in a language I did not understand, a guttural, ancient tongue that seemed to vibrate with untold power. The words were not human, but something else, something from a time before words, before humanity. The air crackled with an unholy energy. My mind reeled, overwhelmed by the sensory assault. I felt a surge of energy, a strange, unwelcome warmth spreading through my body, as if something was trying to take root within me. And then, a phantom hand, cold and ethereal, seemed to touch my forehead, and a wave of memories, not my own, flooded my mind. Images of a terrified young woman, her face obscured by shadow, her eyes wide with terror, her screams echoing in a forgotten forest. Clara, her final moments, her fear, her memories, now somehow my own. The Keeper laughed, a dry, rattling sound that sent shivers down my spine. "The veil thins, Ethan, and your memory will feed the old ones." My blood ran cold. The price of truth was not just my sanity, but my very essence. I was being consumed. The flood of Clara's memories, her terror, her final moments, was a jarring, horrifying experience. My own memories felt like they were being peeled away, replaced by the crushing weight of her fear. The keeper's laughter echoed through the church, a chilling sound that cemented my understanding of the true horror of the Veil Keepers and their ancient gods. I was not just witnessing a ritual, I was becoming a part of it, a vessel for the Whisperer's insatiable hunger. My mind screamed in protest, fighting against the tide of foreign memories, against the insidious corruption that threatened to consume me. The green light from the altar pulsed violently, and the keeper's chanting became a guttural shriek, laced with frustration and rage. The Whisperers, their shadowy forms now closer, more tangible, pressed in on me, their silent hunger a suffocating weight. My own memories were fading, replaced by a chaotic torrent of stolen lives, of forgotten fears and consumed hopes. Clara's terror, the Blackwood's despair, it all swirled within me, a suffocating maelstrom. I was a vessel, a conduit for their eternal feast. But then, the wooden block, Sarah's block, a vivid image of it, lying on the dusty dresser in room 6, flashed through my mind. It was so small, so innocent, a beacon of defiant innocence against the overwhelming darkness, and with it, a memory of my own. Not a grand, defining moment, but a simple, almost forgotten one. My father, teaching me how to skip stones across a lake, his hand guiding mine, his quiet laughter echoing in the summer air. It was a mundane memory, but it was mine, and it was enough. A surge of white-hot pain erupted in my head, a violent clash of stolen and reclaimed memories. The mental assault from the Whisperers momentarily faltered, their insidious hold weakening. This was my chance. I forced my eyes open, my gaze locking onto the keeper. He was a blurred figure, his face contorted in a mask of fury, his hands outstretched, as if physically pulling at my mind. The green light intensified, but now it seemed to flicker, to lose its intensity. With a desperate, guttural cry, a sound that felt torn from the depths of my very being, I lurched forward, my body responding to an instinct older than memory. My foot connected with the altar, sending the wooden totems and the ornate box skittering across the floor. The keeper shrieked, a sound of pure agony and thwarted power. The green light sputtered, then died, plunging the church into near darkness, illuminated only by the faint moonlight filtering through the shattered windows. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by my ragged breathing and the frantic beat of my heart. The Whisperers, their shadowy forms momentarily disrupted, began to recede, their menacing presence fading like smoke. The cloying scent of decay lessened, replaced by the damp, earthy smell of the forest. The overwhelming cold began to lift, though a lingering chill remained in my bones. I stumbled backward, my legs barely holding me, my mind still reeling from the psychic assault. My memories, though fragmented and scarred, felt undeniably my own again. The influx of stolen recollections was gone, replaced by a profound emptiness, a void where they had once resided. It was a wound, a terrible scar on my psyche, but it was a wound of survival. The keeper, Old Man Hemlock, lay on the floor before the altar, his dark robe a crumpled heap. He was breathing heavily, his body trembling, his eyes wide and vacant. The unnatural light was gone from his gaze, replaced by a chilling emptiness. He was broken, his connection to the Whisperers severed, his power gone. He was just an old man now, consumed by the very entities he had sought to serve. A faint, almost imperceptible whisper, a final mournful sigh, seemed to emanate from his lips. Forgotten, lost, gone. It was the echo of all the memories he had consumed, all the lives he had helped to erase. And then he fell silent, his body becoming still. I dragged myself out of the church, my body aching, my mind bruised and battered. The moon, now fully risen, cast a pale ghostly light over the forest. The air was cold but clean, the pervasive scent of decay finally gone. The trees, though still ominous, were no longer twisting and menacing. The whispering labyrinth was gone, replaced by the familiar, albeit unsettling silence of the Blackwood Pines wilderness. My car, miraculously, was right where I had left it, its engine still dead. I knew I could not stay. This place, forever tainted by the whisperers, would never truly be safe. I grabbed my bag, leaving the journal, the box, and the terrifying artifacts behind. They belonged to this place, to its darkness, to its forgotten horrors. I stumbled down the winding gravel road, away from the church, away from the motel, away from the shadows that haunted Blackwood Pines. The forest would always remember, but I had to forget, or at least try to. I do not know how long I walked, or how I managed to find my way back to civilization. Days, maybe weeks, passed in a blur of disoriented silence. The memory of the church, of the keeper, of the whisperers, is a fractured nightmare, a mosaic of chilling images and distorted sounds. I am forever changed. The journalist I once was, the one who craved answers, is gone. In his place is a man haunted by what he saw, what he felt, what he almost became. The emptiness where stolen memories once resided is a constant reminder, a phantom limb of my former self. The official story, the one the local police eventually pieced together, attributes the Blackwood family's disappearance to a lone, deranged cult leader, Old Man Hemlock, who they claim succumbed to a psychotic break and led his family into the wilderness, where they perished. My testimony, fragmented and bordering on the unbelievable, was dismissed as a trauma-induced delusion. They found Hemlock's body in the abandoned church, surrounded by the unsettling artifacts, and closed the case, filing it under isolated incident. They did not find the Blackwoods. They never will. Their memories, their very essences, were devoured. I carry the scars of Blackwood Pines. The whispers still echo in the quiet moments, a faint, insidious hum at the edge of my hearing. The scent of decay, though not present, is perpetually etched in my mind, a phantom smell that resurfaces in moments of stress or fear. I know the truth. The Veil Keepers are still out there, though without the Keeper, their power may be diminished. And the Forest Whisperers, ancient and insatiable, still lurk in the shadows, waiting for the veil to thin again, waiting for another unsuspecting soul to wander into their forgotten domain. My memory is fragile now, like a tattered flag fluttering in a constant gale. I have lost pieces of myself, fragments of my past that I can never reclaim. But I remember the feeling of Sarah's wooden block, the last innocent memory before the encroaching darkness, and I remember the look in the Keeper's eyes, a profound emptiness that mirrored the void where his soul once was. The truth came at a terrible price, a piece of my very being, but I survived, and now I have told you my story, a warning, a plea, a truth that defies explanation. The woods are never truly silent, and some secrets are best left undisturbed. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know if you believe in the whispers, and subscribe for more chilling tales.